Last week we embarked upon the classical world, the world of the Greeks and the Romans. We began with the geometric archaic age. We started to proceed toward the classical age, but we did not complete it. So today I will go through the slides very quickly of the geometric and archaic periods leading into the classical, and we shall concentrate primarily on the classical period as the new material today. And tomorrow we shall go on to the Hellenistic period, and as such we shall complete the sequence of the archaic, classical and Hellenistic periods. We said that after the end of the Bronze Age, the late Bronze Age world of the Mycenaeans, especially in the western part of the Aegean, a dark age ensued. For several centuries after the demise of the Minoans and the Mycenaeans, and the forgetting of the skills of monumental craftsmanship, we have a rebirth, a reawakening around the 8th century BC, where the first instances of monumentality are in the creation of pots, geometric pots which have geometric designs on them that gives the name to the so-called geometric period. We looked at those, and then we also tried to trace the creative process of the early Greeks as to how the notion of the classical evolved, how it developed, and we also looked at the premise of what was the underlying principle in the creative process. And in this, we underlined the fact that the ancient Greeks, from the archaic to the classical period, were not after the creative in the sense we mean of creating something different. Quite on the contrary, they concentrated their energies on perfecting and making better what they had in hand. So in the sculptural production as well as in the archaic architectural production, it is possible to trace this quite well, moving on from very awkward proportions to more refined proportions. And this is a parallel process in sculpture as well as architecture. In this respect, we also underlined the fact that the first architectural products, which could be termed monumental in any sense, were the temples. The focus of the creative design energies in this respect was the creation of a temple befitting the gods or goddesses of a polis, the city-state. And because the Greek temple was a very sculptural product, created primarily in stone, marble or limestone, the skills that were required to cut and shape the stone are sculptural skills. So we have the parallel evolution of the stonemason and the architect creating the temple in stone, as well as the sculptor creating the kouros and kore statues in stone. So the mentality of the Greeks was very much focused on the potential of stone as a material, and in architecture, of course, having more sophisticated decisions that needed to be taken, the process was somewhat seemingly different, but at the base it was the same mentality because the artists were the same. The artists who carved the monumental sculptures were often the same artists who carved not only the statuary connected with the temples, but the temples themselves. So, looking at the geometric production, we underlined the very diluted figures in the forms of schematized geometric conventions, very thin waistlines, triangular bodies, showing war utensils, and we stressed what types of subjects, the important subjects in the sustenance, survival, and daily life of the polis were concerned. We showed several of these, and all of them share the convention of meanders, geometric horizontal patterns, lozenges, the horses with thin, tall legs, just like the humans, which are depicted in the same manner that you can see here. Look at the tall legs. This kind of stylization, both in the depiction of animals as well as the depiction of the humans, is not realistic. It is an artistic convention which simplifies and reduces what needs to be depicted to its barest essentials, as you see on these geometric pots. We also pointed at the depiction of certain mythologies. So pots were something like a visual text, and people looking at these pots were reminded of the stories of giants, the stories of gods, which took place in the distant Bronze Age or even before. And these stories were also depicted in the pots, not only in the geometric age, but in pots coming all the way into the classical age as well. A very popular story was the blinding of Polyphemus, the giant, which shows the cohesion and the team spirit of the male members of the polis, which was necessary to overcome the giant. And the gist of the story is that it's not just strength, but also mental strength to be able to, decide, to be able to develop a trick to overcome a problem, as in the case of the giant, which is made drunk and then which is blinded by the team effort of the male members of the polis. The same thing you can see here. The giant is on the ground, and then you have the male members blinding the Polyphemus giant. And in this particular image, the last one of the series of the Polyphemus pictures that I showed last week, we said that there's an interesting detail that they succeeded in a very simplistic way even to show emotion. So by depicting an open mouth here, they succeeded in conveying a sense of feeling, surprise, fear, or whatever, perhaps all of them together. So this is a remarkable achievement because when we look at the evolution of Greek sculpture into the classical age, where we see the finest examples in the 5th century BC, there's no room for emotion. The sculptures are worked in the ideal manner. They try to convey an ideal impression, the working of perfect compositions, the perfect proportions, and the individuality of the people who are depicted, the reality about their idiosyncratic features have no place. Everything is smoothed to give the perfect appearance. And the revelation of emotion does not emerge until the Hellenistic period. So it's very noteworthy to see this instance already in the archaic age. And then we talked about the utility of vase paintings to show architectural details. And in cases where the evidence of writing is not sufficient or is non-existent, sometimes we can investigate the depictions and illustrations on Greek vases to collaborate the other kinds of evidence we have. We should not take them too literally, because there's always a convention of the graphic artist which we may not understand, but in a very general way, the vase depictions can provide very useful information. So after the effort to create products that were lasting and monumental, like the geometric pots, we then see the efforts to create temples. The early temples were longitudinal, narrow structures which reveal the lack of confidence in roofing, and they also reveal the use of indurable materials at the outset. Wood, rushes, reeds, which don't have traces surviving to our time. But the major effort here was to create a house for the god or the goddess, not a congregational space. So when the transition gradually took place from rather endurable structures in which human beings and mortals lived, to honoring the gods and goddesses with houses that befitted their status, the effort was not only an architectural one, but also an engineering problem faced these early builders. So the early temple, as well as the late temple, did not change in purpose. The purpose was never a congregational space. The gathering, the congregation for worshipping purposes took place outside the temple, in front of altars, sunak, in front of the temples. The monumental structure, which had to be larger than the structures for mortals, because the gods had to be honored in this manner, were parallel efforts compared with the geometric pots, in that the pots which were 1.5 meters high are the blowing up and monumentalization of ordinary kitchen pots. So if the ancient Greeks are monumentalizing the kitchen pots to honor their heroes and their dead, members of the polis, then obviously something which is done exclusively for the god had to be even more monumental than ordinary dwellings. And we said that this monumentality had a visual component. I mean, this is an architecture where its sculptural perception was very important, and the sculptural perception is usually conveyed by a colonnade on all four sides, which regulated the visual perception of the temple. Just like the outside, the inside also had to be regulated in such a manner, because that is where the statue of the god was to be placed. But given this function, the solution of a space large enough and open enough to allow the visual seeing, the perception of the statue, was another problem. in order to make the building stand, and in order to be able to have an appropriate roof on the temple, the early architects usually had to have a single colonnade in the center in order to make this possible. So while the single colonnade in the center solved a structural problem to carry the roof of the temple and to be able to span the distance between the two walls, it unfortunately obscured and obliterated and compromised the viewing of the statue which was set at the end of the chamber for the god. So you could view the statue standing outside from between the columns, but having the statue removed to the left or to the right would create a lack of symmetry and a disorder in this regard. So it had to be there, and this was a problem which gradually had to be solved, as you see here. So in time, the central colonnade was removed. The walls were sometimes strengthened as an intermediate solution, and then the whole process of the Greek temple is regulating the interior, which was of the right proportions to display the statue in full splendor in order to respect the god, and of course at the same time being able to manage the pitched roof with the appropriate height and covering in order to shelter the god. So this process of perfecting the proportions of the temple, which was built in limestone and marble, was a similar process in the mental artistic creativity in the creation of kouros and kore statues, as we mentioned last time. So in this kouros from the late 7th century, we see the early effort of creating the ideal representation for the muscular, for the brave, and for the ideal representation of the male member of the polis, which in turn reflects the image of the polis. And symmetries, imaginary lines, play a great role in this. And then we looked at a series of progressions, how the linear, awkward beginnings gradually fleshed out to the disappearance of incised lines, showing more muscle and more body. But because the marble is a material with low tensile strength, you can't extend legs and arms in different directions because the marble will also break. So these standing figures initially are very Egyptian-like. We also mentioned, we paid our respects to Le Corbusier, who as a young student was very fascinated by the statues of two kouroi, Cleobis and Biton, which he drew, which he sketched in the Athens National Museum. So compared with the first kouros I saw, this one is slightly later. The lines have disappeared. These lines again are less incised, and you see underlying musculature, giving an idea about how the body operates with the proper muscles. Here another version of the same. And then we pointed at this example to reveal the conveyance of what we call contrapposto, a figure which succeeds to show the distribution of weight. So when you look at the strict axis of the figure, you see that both sides are not equal, that the hip is straight here, and the hip is thrown out on the other side, as you can see. So they are beginning to understand how the body actually works anatomically. If you stand with the weight on 2 feet, it has a more symmetrical appearance. And if you stand with the weight on 1 foot only, then you have a slightly changing distribution of weight, which they are conveying in this particular statue. And while they are working on the proportions of the overall anatomy, they are also working on refining the face. And the progression for the face is also the effort to create the most idealized aesthetic rendering of the so-called archaic frozen smile. It's not a smile of emotion, but it's a smile of convention. It's a smile to convey an ideal representation, as you see here. In the Kore statues, the female statues, we have exactly the same progression. And in the female statues as well, as we looked at several examples, we have a progression from rather awkward or rather severe, renderings of the face, as you see here, to the creation of an archaic smile with worked and accepted, proportions for the facial expression, as you can see here. The eyes are no longer bulging. The smile is more comfortable, but none of this has any purpose of conveying emotion. This is a cool beauty. It's a archaic frozen smile. It's a convention which sets a standard for depicting the idealized beauty rather than showing a sense of feeling. There is no effort to do that at all. So we then continued with the temples to show the same process of how it is a gradual effort to improve the dimensions, to improve the proportions. But while a sculpture is a slab of marble, a temple consists of masses of marble which are put together, in which engineering and structural problems have to be faced. So if you look at the Greek temple in its developed state, you will notice that every part of the Greek temple, from the visible parts like the columns to the invisible parts, the foundations or the underlying blocks of stone, are done with quality masonry. Each block for the Greek temple is shaped and cut in a precise manner. It has a precise location. The blocks are tied, to each other, and the placement and the proportion of each one of these blocks has a visual purpose. So we are dealing with an architectural sculpture, an architecture which has to make a visual impact in the landscape, befitting the status of the gods. It is often wondered how the various features of the Greek temple came into being, and sometimes the theory that the temples originally done in wood were translated in stone, and elements like triglyphs were put in to cover the edges of protruding beams is put forth. But this is not without problems, because you have triglyphs on all four sides. And if you consider the beams, of the pitched roof, going in two directions, then it would be very difficult to explain the short ends of the temple, as we said. And then we talked about the birth of different conventions, the Doric order and the Ionic order. The Doric order being more common in the West, in mainland Greece, and the Ionic order being more common in the East, in Western Anatolia. Even though we find that in the classical period, the Ionian and Doric orders tend to be mixed, as we shall see toward the middle of the class. In terms of the basic characteristics, it is usually stated that the Doric order is the more stout, solid-looking order, and the Ionian one is the higher and more slender order, for the simple reason that the shaft of the Ionian order is taller, as you can see, generally speaking, and the shaft of the Doric order is shorter. The way this is calculated is through the column diameter. So you have a measure for the column diameter, and then you have 5 times the column diameter, all the way to 10 times the column diameter, and so you have units with which you put together a facade of the temple. Other than the columns, which have a base and a volute in the case of the Ionian order, the major difference is in the top part, as we mentioned yesterday, because in the entablature of the Doric order, we have triglyphs and metopes. But in the entablature of the Ionian order, there are no metopes and triglyphs. There is this simple horizontal course called the frieze, which had 3 bands, and then which could be painted with various designs on the top. The top part, the cornice, is similar for both orders. There is a pediment. So the relationship of column, entablature, and the cornice, together with the pediment, are the major variables which have to be taken into consideration in the overall design of the Greek temple. So it is not just a single column, as in the case of a single kouros or a single kore, which is in question, but it is the order. It is the colonnade. So if you have a temple in the Doric order, or if you have a temple in the Ionic order, working with the minutest change of one element in that order, whether it be Doric or Ionic, will affect the entire short facade or the entire long facade. So if you play with the dimension of the column diameter, then you will have a higher or a lower column. And then if you play with the number of the columns in front, again, whether you have 6 columns or 8 columns in front, will affect the overall appearance, the visual perception of the facade. And then once you play with this dimension here, inevitably the metopes and the triglyphs, the height at which they are perceived, and then the solution of the proportions of the pediment on top will also be affected. And it is very, very precise. When we look at the metopes and the triglyphs, we see that each triglyph is on the middle axis of the columns. And then in order not to have a wide space for the metopes, an additional triglyph is placed in the open space between the central axis of columns in the intercolumnar axis. So in the middle of this, intercolumnar axis here, you have another triglyph. So you have triglyph, metopy in a rhythm, paying attention to the fact that the corner, triglyph has to be adjusted slightly with millimeters sometimes in order to have the perfect, placement. So the corner triglyph may or may not be precisely on intercolumnar axis because you need to have strong corners. So in the most schematic sense, we have a cella using the Latin word, or a naos, and then you have an entrance, which is the pronaos. Pro means toward, and then there is a back part called the opistoromos, which counteracts the pronaos. So you have a kind of regulation. If you remember the early lines on the Kouros statues, where they tried to use symmetry, in the same way, the regulation of the design of the early Greek temple paid attention to certain balanced elements of design, like the front being balanced with the back. There are countless variations, but the basic premise is usually upheld. And as I said, they work out the number of the columns on the long and short sides. When we look at the Temple of Apollo at Thermon in the mainland Greece, we see the stratigraphy, the different levels from the earlier to the later. And in the earliest instances, you see that there was a long and narrow temple, a very thin, elongated structure, paying attention to the problem of bridging, spanning the distance between the two walls of the temple to carry the roof. And then gradually, that was worked out with more confidence. The columns were added to the outside of the temple, and then the primary effort being to convey the best possible viewing of the statue of the god was seen in the temple of Hera in Olympia, another temple than Thermon. But you see what they have done. The central colonnade, which existed in the Temple of Apollo at Thermon, was removed. So the view was cleared for the perception of the statue of the god. But in doing so, it is a rather eclectic solution that we see employed by the Greek architects. There are these funny struts, these funny projections, which you see in the cella wall, interspersed with columns. So these articulate the interior, but they also act as supports. And they clear the viewing for the statue of the god. But this was an early example, as we said. They succeeded in that inner dimension. But when we look at the outside of this temple, when we look at this part here, the front of the temple, what we see is a very awkward early manifestation. You have rather short, awkward proportions for the Doric order, the entablature, and then the cornice and the pediment appear to be weighing down upon. So the pediment and the cornice seem to be almost crushing the columns which are so short in this instance. Another problem is the lack of triglyphs in the middle intercolumniations. The interaxial center lacks a triglyph. So you have a triglyph, long metopy, triglyph, long metopy, rather than triglyph, metopy, triglyph, metopy. That hasn't evolved yet. So they have to work this out. And in the replacement of the various elements of the colonnade, we see that the capitals are of different sizes. So these show repairs and replacements in the later period. And then until the erection of the Hephaestion on the Acropolis of Athens, I showed a couple of examples through which you can judge, just like the Kouros statues, how the Doric order as well as the Ionic had to evolve. So here you see the columns becoming thin toward the top, giving a sense of height. But the capitals are very mushroom-like. They are very bulging. The column doesn't grow into the capital to carry the entablature. Here it is slightly better. The capitals are not so bulging. They are more contained, and the shaft of the column has a smoother transition into the capital, and then there is an intervening element here. You see the triglyphs in all the appropriate places, and then the cornice is not weighing down so much because it looks as if a higher temple, a more soaring temple has been achieved, as you see here. The Doric columns are somewhat taller. And of course, while all those dimensions were being experimented upon, you have to consider the dilemma of the ancient Greek architect that all of this is being done for the statue of the god. So you could have the right appearance for the outside, but if you can't match the proportions and the scale of the statue, the monumental statue inside, then the god will appear to be cramped in a frame which is created for him. And in this case, as some of the ancient writers say, the god, if he wished to do so, won't be able to stand up. I don't know how literally we should take that, but we do know that there is an effort to work out the interior as well. So 6 by 13 or 6 by 11, the 6 is a hexa style, 8 is the octa style. These are conventions. But the hexa style seems to work quite well. It seems to give good results. And in the Hephaestion in Athens, on the Acropolis of Athens, we find that with this hexa style, it is also possible to have a desirable solution for the interior, where the statue of the god is not only seen properly as it should be seen in full splendor, but he is also framed by a U-shaped colonnade. So there is an additional framing which contextualizes the statue here, pointing to the solving of the problems. And here is the exterior view of the Hephaestion. You see that the Doric columns are quite high. The capitals grow out of the columns. You don't have that awkward transition where the capital is separated from the shaft of the column. The columns appear to be carrying the entablature and the pediment, which is soaring toward the heavens. The triglyph metopy relationships, looking at from the side, creates the desired light and shade effects. So that was the desire. Now I have been pointing until this point to the design process, the improvement of the design of the statues, the cross statues, as well as the design of the temple, the inside of the temple and the outside of the temple. But we should not forget that involved in this design is also a very sculptural effort. So in the temples, the sculptor was engaged not only in carving the drums, the capitals, the triglyphs, the blocks for the cornice or for the base of the temple, but the sculptor was also involved in having an appropriate composition for the pediments. These sculptures in the pediments could sometimes be absolutely freestanding, as in later periods. Sometimes they would be, low reliefs and attached. But the basic problem was to create a unity of time and place, a unity of the narrative. And when we look at this example here, this is the Temple of Artemis at Corfu, in the island of Corfu in Greece. We see an example where there is an early stage of a lack of unity. Instead of having one central, the story, one central narration, there are several unrelated ones and one narration which is combined. So in the center, which is the highest part, we have the Gorgon Medusa. The Gorgon Medusa is a lady with, snakes. And according to the mythology, you don't need to remember these names. She was caught by, Perseus, who pursued her. And at the moment she was caught, her head was cut off. And when the head was cut off, she gave birth to the mythical horse Pegasus and a young man. So we see all those elements. If you look at her, she has her arms open, so she is running. I mean, the legs are in the running position. So we understand that she is escaping and that she is being pursued. And then we understand that her head was cut off, even though there's no cut off head being shown here, because we see the horse, Pegasus, the winged horse, and we see the human, the young man here. And according to the story, which everybody knew at that time, the birth of the horse and the young man happened only after her head was cut off. So the story goes that the head was cut off. So here, in one scene here, you are showing the pursuit, the escape, the killing of the Gorgon Medusa, and the birth. They're all shown together in one, scene. So that scene is combining the elements, the sequence of the narratives, the different episodes of the same narrative. However, when you look to the sides here, you see two panthers a bit reminiscent a little bit of the wild beasts accompanying the mother goddess at Çatalhöyük. But here, these panthers are accompanying the scene, and then they are befitting this larger space here. They are not standing, but sort of crouching. And then, when you look at the sides here, these small parts, you see totally unrelated episodes. those episodes have nothing to do with the Gorgon Medusa. They are tiny, and they have to do with the legends of Troy, legends of Troy, King Priam in his throne, and other legends which were very well known to the people at that time. And then the significance of the event has nothing to do with the place and the time. It is all the difficult problem of a triangular space in which a pictorial narrative had to be inserted by the narrator, who is the sculptor, obviously. So that same problem of how to fit in a narrative into a triangular space with success, and working out what kind of narrative, how many narratives, had to be worked out in time. And in the edges, if you have very narrow triangular spaces, the only thing you can do is to show a person who is lying down. And who can lie down? Someone who is killed, someone who is defeated. So you have these reclining warriors on both sides. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it's all symmetrical, and they're all squeezed into this triangular space. In a slightly later example, in the Temple of Zeus at Olympia, you see that there is one scene here. There are not several unrelated scenes, but one scene showing a chariot race. With the king of Elis, which is the region where the temple of Zeus at Olympia is. And there are episodes of the scene. It is slightly symmetrical. I mean, the chariots are doubled, and in this also you have the reclining figures. So they are beginning to work out a logic for the depiction of narrative on the pediment of the Greek temple. Here's a detail of the same thing. I mean, there's conventions here try to create the symmetrical appearance, even though they may not be exactly identical. And as I said, the two edges of the pediment are the places where reclining figures were usually placed. In the early examples, some awkward instances occurred, like this dying warrior here had to be fitted into the narrow space of the pediment. He obviously, had his weapon, he was holding it. He probably had a shield which has disappeared. But again, it looks as if he is posing. He doesn't look like a realistically, dying person here. The leg has this peculiar the stance where it is bent over the left leg. There's something awkward about the proportioning of it. So again, this is part of the effort to have a more convincing and visually more proportioned design. Here you see that it has been achieved. The shield provides a resting part for the arm. The other arm is resting on the ground. The leg here doesn't have that uncomfortable pose of crossing over to the left leg. The head is bent slightly in front. So compared with this figure, you see that the visual impact is more practiced. The subject is the same, but the overall proportion, the overall placement of the figure has been studied to create that effect. And all the time, while this effort to create a better solution of the design of the different parts of the Greek temple was going on, the architects and sculptors were also working on freestanding sculpture. And the introduction of bronze sculpture, bronze cast sculpture, tended to convey the same elements. And there were many copies of bronze sculptures as well. And when you look at this charioteer, arabacı of Delphi, you see that the classical stance of having a gaze, staring ahead, a very cool character, not an emotional character, but contained with reason. A figure totally in control, mentally and physically, of what he is doing, is conveying again the perfect moment, as you see here. When you look at the face of the charioteer, you look at the fine folds of the drapery, the way the folds, gently come to the ground. There is a very subdued and low-key aesthetic understanding here with the purpose of conveying ideal beauty. And toward the classical age, they are working further on the contrapposto. Here you see the throwing of the hip to one side as the weight distribution differs between the two legs. The face is also slightly turned. And in this instance, when you look at the details here, you see the underlying flesh being conveyed in a much better way. I did mention that the problem of the single slab of marble was very important. The sculptor went to the quarry. He touched the, he looked at the candidate, the slab of marble. He tapped it. He looked if it had any cracks, undesirable veins, or anything like that. Then he would say, ah, this is a perfect marble. He might even smell it to see if it was a good quality marble or not. And then he would have it quarried out from the quarry, and then begin working on it by subtraction. You can't add anything to a sculpture. You work with subtraction. And then in order to have an arm which is standing in an empty space, very often you had struts, you had supports. You needed an additional support to make the statue standing. And in the classical age, when they became more confident after developing the bronze statues, the range of poses began to increase, as we see in this dying Niobit figure. There is no emotion here whatsoever. Even the moment of death, the last gasp of life, has been aestheticized to a peak of the beauty. So a composition is created in the form of the triangle. You could even, as architects, draw dotted lines to see the composition of this figure. I mean, there's a diagonal here. There's another diagonal here. You have the diagonal of the face. Here you have another, diagonal. So all these crossing imaginary lines had a preconceived composition to convey the figure in the best possible manner, but the emotion is still lacking. So you have to consider the movement towards the classical age to the 5th century BC as the point where in sculpture, in architecture, the best possible desired solutions were reached. But it has to be repeated again and again that the sculptural aspect of the Greek temple had to solve the problems caused by the material it was built with, that is, stone. So when you look at the Greek temple and the basic construction principles of the Greek temple, at its simplest, it is a system of load and support. It's a system of post and lintel. So something has to carry and support what is on top. And if both the carrier and the supporter, the post and the lintel, are stone, then you have limitations. Because stone has a very low tensile strength, you can't open the distance between two columns to a very great extent, because the monolithic block which is carried there will crack. It will break. So the architect, while experimenting with the visual ideals and the visual targets that he wanted to achieve, had also to grapple with these structural limitations, the structural challenges which he had to solve. So in the Greek system, the idea of the post and lintel shows the cracking point of the stone. But the Greeks, nevertheless, did not use the system of the arch very much. That was for the Romans to popularize. They still stuck to this system. So they had to work with limited lengths of stone according to the quality of the material. This is a joke in a tour. Some students from Metu are trying to support what they thought is falling, but that's a visual joke there. So while these structural problems, the problems of transporting and extracting the stone and then putting the stone in place are all being achieved, the Greek architect sculptor or Greek sculptor designer never forgot that the subtractive principles of working out a statue were applicable in the carving of a column or blocks of stone or reliefs. So for that reason, the drums or the blocks which constituted the shafts, the columns, were usually quarried with extra margins. So from the quarry, you would probably have a drum carved out like this. And then after you put them one on top of each other in the assembly of the temple, you left a margin, because in the process of lifting, in the process of carrying other blocks and putting them into place, well, you might have an accident. I mean, you might chip the stone, another block of stone might hit what is already in place, and you have an undesirable hole there. So in order to prevent that, the final chiseling of the blocks, the absolute refinement, was not done until the very end. And the unfinished temples or unfinished blocks that we find in the sites of the temples give us a good idea about that. If you look at this drum from Sardis, you don't need to remember the name, you can clearly see the chiseling and the marking for flutes. So obviously this never got to the fluting stage where this would be carved out, but we have an idea that this extra margin had to be maintained in order to maintain the solidity and visual refinement of the block. In this regard, no matter what the blocks were, whether they were blocks constituting the floor of the temple, the stylobate, or the interior, or whether they were different, drums, they were precisely put into place. And each drum had a depression where you could place them, together with dowel holes. So the assembly of the Greek temple was a very precise act. Great precision, great mastery of the cutting and dimensioning and measuring of the stone had to be considered. And again, we know these from the chisel marks that we see in demolished temples and unfinished temples. In Priene, in western Turkey, the temple of Athena, you don't need to remember the names. You see the floor of the temple, you see what is underneath the floor of the temple, and you see that good quality cut stone masonry is used through and through. And where the drums were to be placed are chiseled ahead of time. So there was a geometrical precision, a geometrical inflexibility in having the actual precise placement of the blocks. So the placing of the blocks for the stylobate or floor of the temple again were done with these precise lines, and every block had its place with great attention to detail, as you can see in this incision. So this block would be placed, but it would also have a chisel mark on top to indicate that the block which is on top of it would have a precise location. And this masonry skill continued way into the Hellenistic period. And then you have dowel holes of different kinds with molten lead poured inside. These are in the form of dovetails, kırlangıç kuyruğu, and then you had molten lead, erimiş kurşun, poured into these holes, and they would stabilize the blocks in case of tremors or the settling of the earth or the ground. So the overall placement of blocks on top would not be affected. In other words, there's hardly any mortar or cement between the blocks. They are put together very, very precisely and then clamped together with dovetail or dowel holes. So it's a bit like a ballerina. I mean, the balance of the ballerina has to be very, very precise. Or you could think of a golf ball. I mean, the slightest push will bring the ball out of range. So you have to have the precision of the ballerina or the golf person, the person playing golf, to put the blocks into their space. So the Greek architect would not have something like this. I mean, they did not say, this looks nice, so let's put it there. They had a rationale for each one of the blocks because the variation in the dimensions of each block would necessitate a variation which followed like the course of domino stones affecting the overall design. As an extreme joke, when the Coca-Cola company used the Parthenon to promote the Coca-Cola product, So you see the columns of the Parthenon in the shape of the Coca-Cola, bottle. The then culture minister of Greece, Melina Mercury, sued the Coca-Cola, company, saying that this was a disrespect to the cultural heritage of Greece. So Coca-Cola has to have less the harmful the promotions of the product, not to use the Parthenon, but to use other means to promote the product. So much for the sculpture, and so much for the qualities of the stone. We said that the visual perception, which was created, also had to be designed in the angle of perception. And this is true of freestanding sculptures as well as temples. The most famous Greek sculpture that everybody knows about is the sculpture called Diskopolos, the discus thrower, by the Greek artist Myron. But we know it through Roman copies, but the pose is the same. And the British Museum gave their Roman copy of the Diskopolos as a gesture to honor Istanbul being a cultural capital in 210 last year. So there was a big, ceremony, and the Diskopolos was displayed in Istanbul. It came all the way to Turkey, and then it went back. The Diskopolos, as you see, is showing frozen action, one moment. So you have the kouros, but the kouros is not standing now, but engaged in the moment of hurling the discus. He is grabbing the discus. He has gained momentum, and you know how the discus is thrown. I mean, you have your arms, and then you turn. I mean, you turn, in a particular speed to gain the right momentum. And when you feel you have the momentum, then you let go of the, discus. So this is the moment just before the discus departs from the hand. So the turning is finished, and the discus is just about to, fly out of the, hand. So it's the perfect moment, the chosen moment, but this chosen moment is also done with a perfect angle. So you have these lines here, you have zigzags. The absolute symmetry is avoided here, and the way this is perceived now in the photograph is the way it was desired to be seen from the calculated angle. If you move slightly to the right or slightly to the left of the figure, it will appear that the figure is stumbling, staggering, or falling. So to get this perfect composition, you have to look at the discus thrower, the Diskopolos, only from this angle, from this particular angle, not the back, not slightly to the left, not slightly to the right. And then you will be able to see that perfect moment which the artist had in mind. In a similar way, the Greek temple was a sculpture in space. You had the Greek temple with its colonnade, and then you saw this from many, many kilometers away. And then you had a propylon, which is the gate of the Greek, of the sacred, temenos. And once you entered through the propylon, you had a three-quarter view. You had this angular view. You didn't see smack the long side or immediately the frontal short side of the temple, but you saw a three-quarter view. And this was also practiced and practiced until they got to the building of the Parthenon on the Acropolis of Athens. So the Parthenon on the Acropolis of Athens is considered as the peak point of these efforts of the Doric artists. After the Parthenon, there was no Doric temple that was higher or that was more monumental, because it was the last point which Doric could reach in the Parthenon. You saw the temple from many kilometers away as a proud symbol of Athens. And then as you came closer, the temple disappeared from view. And then you went through the Propylaea, which was a special gate of Athens. And then you saw the three-quarter view. Le Corbusier also caught that. The Parthenon seemed to be growing out of the rock in a natural sort of unison with the bare rock, having the man-made temple rising high up. So you have the Parthenon here. The special gate of the Parthenon is the Propylaea here. So once you come to the Acropolis and you go through the Propylaea, once you emerge from the Propylaea, you see the three-quarter view of the Parthenon. You don't see this or that, but you have a slight angle. So the design of the Propylaea, of the Acropolis, with the Propylaea, the special gate, and then the temple itself, is calculated as finely as the discus thrower, the discopolos. You have one perfect angle there. And in plan, you see the Propylaea. You come up as you get into the Acropolis of Athens. You don't enter from here or there or somewhere here. You come in from here, and then you get the three-quarter view to take in the sculptural, perfection of the temple, which are these visual proportions. And the Parthenon stands without rival. There are other temples, the temple of Athena Nike here, a small temple. There's another temple, the Erection here. Erection here. So you have the temple of Athena Nike, you have the Erection, but they certainly don't compete with the temple dedicated to the patron deity of Athens, which is Athena. So Athena is given her temple as a gift from the people of Athens in full splendor, with the full colonnade, the metopes and the triglyphs, the pediment, and so on. So Le Corbusier also was quite impressed with this sequence. The rock of Athens, the Aegean sky, the blue skies of the Mediterranean Sea, and then the light-colored stone, shining in the air, growing out of the rock. It created the perfect union of, the nature and the man-made. And this is architectural sculpture. This is a sculpture, a monumental sculpture in the landscape, which had to be visually perceived in a calculated way. So you had the multitudes, climbing through the Propylaea. They would, go in, they would come out, they would meet the statue of Athena, and they would have the full splendor of the three-quarter view. And the Propylaea itself, I draw your attention to the fact, is an official architecture, and it also has a pediment. It also has triglyphs and metopes, so that it has the right official traditional respect to the traditional design. But the propylaea, despite the likeness to the temple, is not a temple. I mean, we said that the Greeks did not like changing rules. They had one system and they tried to perfect it. So this kind of arrangement, hexastyle with metope triglyph, is, you know, perfectly familiar to the eye. It's perfectly respectable. The proportions are good, but it is ultimately a gate. And because it's a gate, they have, you know, 3 metopes and 2 triglyphs, because they have widened the central intercolumniation here. So even though the propylaea looks like a temple, because it is not a temple, the Greek architect feels the freedom of playing with the dimensions, and because of the functional necessity of widening the central, you know, entrance, the number of triglyphs and metopes here has been tampered with. But other than that, you can see that the propylaea is not only a passage, it's also a facade which unites the two, you know, buildings on the two sides. I mean, these two buildings here are unified by having the stairs here. So you have a regulated proper entrance for the Parthenon. And once you go through the passage of the propylaea, as Le Corbusier also saw it, I mean, he depicted the feeling of narrowing the space through the two rising arms of the Acropolis, magnetically attracting you into the propylon through the light and shade areas. You go through the propylaea, you come out from the inside, and your first view through the colonnade of the propylaea of the Parthenon is this three-quarter view. It's a very calculated view to give the perfect appearance. And when you come out of the colonnade of the propylaea, this is what you see, the three-quarter view of the Parthenon, as you see here. And the deep shadows, the columns being bathed in light, give you a symphony of light. I mean, light itself becomes almost like a color. I mean, this is an architecture of sunshine. It doesn't work in places where you don't have sunshine. When you have to have sunshine, if not for 365 days of the year, for a large part of the year, in order to have the contrast of light and shade, to be able to appreciate the Parthenon with the full splendor of the height of the columns, the full splendor of these freestanding figures in the pediment, and the full splendor of the carved metopes, each of which, you know, have a mythological scene, and they're corrected for viewing from below. So when you look, you know, upwards, you have a correction visually, which allows the perfect the perception. And here you see how the shadows work depending on the changing direction of the sun. And in this regard, the contrast of bold horizontals here contrasting with the shimmering verticals, I mean, this very kinetic, you know, effect created by the flutings of the columns was perceived by Le Corbusier, and he decided to reduce it to this very dramatic sketch here. And to make it even more perfect, there is something that we call optical illusion. So none of the surfaces in the Parthenon are straight. They are slightly convex with ever so slightly differing dimensions in order to counteract what was felt to be a sinking feeling. If this had been entirely straight, then looking at it from a distance might give a slightly sagging appearance. But having a slightly convex surface here will give you the absolute straight dynamic effect, which is not very static. So to exaggerate, nothing is straight in the Pantheon. All the surfaces are slightly, bulging, and the columns themselves are given a slight, fattening or thickening in order to counteract the effect of visual distortion. And all of this to house Athena in her the setting, which was to be framed with lots of room to stand and still room, upon the ceiling. There's room for the priests, to come and give their attention to her. And she is framed in a two-story colonnade with ample space all around. And this necessitated an octa-style facade with 8 columns in front. So here you see another rendering of the statue of Athena. But this figure of a priest here will give you a sense of scale. So she was honored in the most appropriate way. Okay, so thank you for now.